I think you all know me. I'm Mike Clouden, CEO of the Milken Institute. It is, as always, my pleasure to welcome you to one of our forums. This forum, because of our speaker, was by invitation only, so we knew we would need to limit attendance, and as I look around the room, that's obvious, so I'm glad that we did. We're adding a few more chairs, but we're delighted that you're here with us today. As you know, we do a series of these throughout the year. This is a great way to get the year started at the Institute. Our next forum is going to be February 25th. That's Julia Zweig. She's Director for Latin America Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. She's going to talk about her new book, Cuba, What Everyone Needs to Know. We have not asked her for her batting average, so we don't know what that is. For those of you who are members of the Milken Institute Associates, and only if you've already signed up because we're full, just a reminder that tomorrow morning we have one of our series of breakfasts we have for the associates only. Tomorrow is John Lechleiter. He's the president and CEO and chairman of Eli Lilly and Company. Again, that's only open to members of the Milken Institute Associates, and in this case, those of you who have already signed up. And of course, just a reminder, we have our little party we hold every year coming up April 26, 27, 28. Is that right this year? Yeah, I think those are the dates. Our great global conference where we'll have, once again, 500 panelists, 130 panels, 3,000 people from all over the world. As those of you who have been there know, it is a fabulous event. It sells out every year. It's one of the most stimulating 3 days that anyone can spend, and I hope that you'll be able to join us for it. I will note that January 31 is the early registration deadline. The price of admission will go up after that. We do have a limited number of places. It will sell out, so if you're interested, I'd urge you to register for it now. And that's enough of a commercial for now. I think it was about 5 years ago, I'm reminded, I had the pleasure of having today's speaker hide out in my office. He wanted to come here to surprise Mike Milken at a dinner we were holding down here, the Prostate Cancer Foundation was, and he asked if he could stay in my office for an hour or so, since he got here early, so that Mike wouldn't know he was here. I must say I have never had more of my colleagues at the Milken Institute decide that they had a reason to come in and talk to me in 1 hour than they did that. And so it's with pleasure I'd like to introduce Mike Milken, who in turn is going to introduce today's speaker. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. We're happy you could join us today. It's an exciting day for us at the Institute. Have a good friend, Joe Torre, and Allie join us. Allie, could you stand up so everyone could say hello to you? Now, many of you want to know what is Joe's secret. Since starting with managing the Yankees, particularly in '96, with getting along with unusual people and large groups of people. Well, Allie is one of 16 and her family, so just getting to know all of Allie's brothers and sisters and dealing with them prepared Joe greatly for his managerial. I don't know if Joe pointed that out in the book as the secret to his success, Allie, or not, but as many of you know, Joe played baseball for the Braves, the Mets, and the Cardinals, and he did such a good job for all three of those teams that later he managed all three teams. I have a feeling that's probably the only person in the history of the world that managed every team he played for at that time. He won a Golden Glove award. He was the MVP in the NL, 4 times an All-Star. He's one of the top 200 home run hitters of all time, and as we're all aware, he joined the Yankees in 1996 and was with the Yankees to 2007. That was the same year that the Prostate Cancer Foundation, we launched the Home Run Challenge, and I have with others, and many of you in the audience, Bob Barth and others that have traveled, have had a chance to visit with Joe, over the last 14 years as we traveled to ballparks around the country. 10 division titles, 6 pennants, 4 world championships. And Sporting News gave him the award as the manager of the decade. But I think, as you know, with everyone, there's a lot more to people than just what you read about every day in the sports pages or what you might read in the newspaper in the morning. And Joe is far more than baseball. He had to be to come to the LA Dodgers and get prepared for all the assignments. But it was great for the Dodgers to be back in the playoffs again with Joe's arrival. Those of you who remember 1988, the last time that the Dodgers had ever won a playoff game during that period of time. So it was a long spell, and we were great. It's great to have Joe here in Los Angeles. There was a movie that won an Academy Award called Beautiful Mind that many of you might have seen a number of years ago, about a Nobel Prize winner who had participated with us at the Global Conference. And a good friend of the Institute, Brian Grazer, made that movie. And to me, the movie was very interesting for a number of reasons. One, it reinforces for all of us that we really don't know what another person's thinking about, what's really going on in their mind. You might think you do, but you might not. And so here, a brilliant individual who had many demons in his mind. I had a number of people that worked for me who had gone to Princeton when he was there. And it was really an interesting experience having them fully looking back over the years, understand their relationship with him, how they interacted with him, and today, when the movie came out, just how embarrassed, and they read the book, they felt because of their interaction with the professor at that time. And in preparation for Richard's involvement with us at the Global Conference, just preparing an environment that he would be comfortable in at that time. And I think Joe will talk to you about it a little bit today, but growing up as a child, not everyone knew what Joe was thinking about. And not being safe at home and fear at home growing up made him introverted, and baseball was his outlet. And how many children today, as we interact with them in schools or adults, don't really tell you what is really on their mind, what they're really thinking about, what is really affecting them, and why they might or might not act the way they do. And Joe and Allie started Joe Torre's Safe at Home Foundation in 2002, really focused on a place that a child could feel safe. Raising public awareness against domestic violence, providing safe places, and education and intervention. And there's more than 10 of these facilities in New York, and we're happy that Joe and Allie are focused on their building these facilities here in Los Angeles. But all of us feel safe. I told Joe that, yes, they founded this foundation in 2002, but he'd been prepared his whole life, because who knows what those players on his team are really thinking about half the time. And so just being able to deal with Manny Ramirez, you can see how simple it's been for Joe versus some of the challenges the Red Sox had at that time. We've had a lot of interesting experiences over the years, but probably when I think about all the baseball games we've gone to and with Joe over those 14 years, and Bob Barth, who's here today, was with us that day, the one that's most memorable to me was when we came into Chicago at about 3:30 in the morning for the Chicago Cubs, New York Yankees, playing in Wrigley Field for the first time since Babe Ruth had pointed to the outfield. Tickets were going for $1,500 a ticket that day in Chicago. And Dusty Baker was the manager of the Cubs. And so we had two people, Dusty Baker and Joe, both who had prostate cancer and both excellent survivors and representatives, coaching that day. And most of you are not aware of it, but the greatest home run hitter in the history of charity baseball is Karros, who had played for the Dodgers. He had a home run over 7 seasons and 1 out of every 2 games he played in. So we were there looking at the opening lineup and noticed he was on the bench for the Chicago Cubs. And they had Choi there. Joe might remember this game. And Choi was starting at first base. So we immediately ran out and told Dusty Baker, with all our statistics, that he had the wrong lineup on the field that day. That we had just flown in, and of course Tommy Lasorda quietly explained it to him, and therefore he didn't put Karras in the opening lineup. Clemens is going for his 300th win. And Clemens is ahead. It's probably the 6th inning. The Yankees are up 1-0, if you remember that game, Joe. There's a little pop. There's a pop-up in front of the pitcher's mound. I think Pryor was pitching that day. And the first baseman, Choi, runs out, and the pitcher runs out, and the pitcher catches the ball, and with his elbow, he brings it down, knocks out Choi, who was trying to get the ball. The ambulance comes out of the right field, takes Choi off the field. Choi is okay. He's in the hospital, and out of the dugout comes the greatest home run hitter in the history of charity baseball, Mr. Karras. A runner gets on first base in the bottom of the 6th or the 7th inning. Karras comes up, and as you would expect, hits a home run. Cubs win 2-1. Yankees lose. Clemens does not get his 300th. And the Prostate Cancer Foundation has raised $100,000 from that home run. Joe had offered to give us the money if they would have kept Karras in the dugout. But what can we say? Before Joe comes up, I just want to mention there was an unusual event here in Los Angeles in 2008 honoring John Wooden and Vince Scully, Hall of Famers. This year, on February 27th, down at LA Live, there'll be the same event every 2 years honoring 2 other Hall of Famers, Sandy Koufax and Joe Torre. If it works into your schedule, it'd be great if you could join. All proceeds from this event go to the Safe at Home Foundation. I can assure you you'll have a wonderful time. The master of the ceremonies has been that major supporter of the Dodgers and recently USC, T.J. Simons, who only writes positive things in the sports section. And I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time. Without further ado, Joe Torre.
Thank you very much. What Michael failed to tell you is before Karras hit that home run, I was really, when you talk about managing, I took Clemens out of the game. And the relief pitcher that I brought in, first pitch was hit out of the ballpark. So another good decision. And, you know, Michael, again, was talking about my resume. You know, I played for the Braves, and I played for the Cardinals, and I played for the Mets, and then managed the Mets and the Braves and the Cardinals. And what that means is that, especially in regards to managing, is you've been fired 3 times. Okay, because you just don't say, all right, I'll see you. I managed you for 3 years. I'm leaving. Somebody helps you out the door, and it was, you know, everything happens for a reason. My mom used to say everything happens for a reason, and I always seem to grab on and hold on to that. And what's interesting, and I don't know with the Dodgers, and I certainly, in the middle of my managing time with the Yankees, I certainly didn't anticipate going anywhere else. And after 12 years with the Yankees, when I finally did say goodbye, and I'm not sure if I was fired or I left there, to be honest with you. I'm still trying to work that out, but we did separate. And I probably would have gone into retirement and, you know, whatever I would have been doing to occupy my time other than the Safe and Home Foundation is still a mystery. But the Dodgers called, and I was fascinated because the LA Dodgers, you know, growing up in Brooklyn, you know, we had 3 teams in New York. We had the Giants, the Dodgers, and the Yankees. And the interesting part about it, I was a Giant fan and hated both the Yankees and the Dodgers. And here I am, you know, managing the Dodgers after 12 years in New York. But when you talk about, you know, Red Sox, and I run around and I, you know, run into a lot of people, and they still connect me with the Yankees because they apologize for being Red Sox fans. Do we have anybody from the Boston area here? See, before I screwed up that playoff game, you wouldn't have raised your hand, you know, but you guys won a couple of World Series here. Well, the Red Sox fan, the people in Boston are very nice, but something happens to them when they go through the turnstiles at Fenway Park. I remember coming down the elevator, it's a true story, coming down the elevator at the hotel we were staying. We're leaving town that day, and we're playing the Red Sox that night. I'm on the elevator, a couple get on the elevator, and look at me, he says, "You're Joe Torre, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "We're going to beat you tonight." I said, "Well, I hope not." I said, "But if you do, you do." And that was the end of that conversation. We continue going toward the lobby, and I could see he wanted to say something else. Get about second or third floor, and he says, "You know what?" He said, "If I had a choice of beating the Yankees or capturing Saddam Hussein, I would pick beating the Yankees." And with that, the door opens, he walks out, and I'm dumbfounded. Because I've heard a lot of them. I had a daughter that was like 2 or 3 years old. We went to church one day, and it was during the playoffs, I think in '99. And after church, she wanted to light all the candles. You keep putting money in it, she keeps lighting candles. And a Red Sox fan comes from the back of the church. She said, "If one of those candles is for a win tonight, I'm going to blow it out." Yeah. They're wonderful people. They're wonderful people. Michael and I became friends out of necessity, I guess, right, Michael? I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in '99, and it's such a terrible word that, all you know about is a dark hole. And Mike Milken is one of the first ones to call me and really sort of clear away some of the clouds. And we, he directed me toward my, choice of doctors, where I should go, where I should inquire. And, as it turned out, he's been a great friend, and he's raised so much money for the research in both, prostate cancer, breast cancer, and it's just been remarkable. And I'm so thankful that I met Michael. And, Michael, we were cruising around. I guess it was in '99. Michael, when did we go to Washington? Was it '99? I got myself in trouble because, we're going in front of Congress, and you introduce yourself. I'm Joe Torre, and I'm a cancer survivor. And I just thought I'd be cute, and I said, "And I survived 4 years of George Steinbrenner." I was just trying to be funny. By the time I got back to Yankee Stadium, George had already gotten wind of this thing. And I said, "George, I was just kidding." I said, "I wouldn't kid about you unless I really loved you." And that went over, I think. I'm not too sure. But I've been very fortunate. Yeah, I played baseball. I had a talent. I played baseball. I played for the 3 clubs. And I was able to manage. I never really had to make a decision about a career. As I said, I was blessed with ability. I was able to use that ability and played for 16, 17 years in the major leagues, and then managed for a number of years and continue to do that, continue to enjoy it. And, I don't think a lot of people really know what players go through. I know in my case, baseball was a way for me to sort of hide. I had a talent. I played. The only thing that really made it tough for me is I didn't have a lot of self-esteem. So I don't know if that drove me a little bit more, but when I did well, I felt better about myself, probably a jerk at times because I was, maybe a little cocky. But I found, and I didn't like the feeling because it was either a high or a low. It wasn't anything in between. And it was just something I dealt with, and it wasn't until really 1995 that I was out of the game, and my wife Allie and I, Allie was pregnant with our daughter Andrea, and she was going to something called Life Success, which was in Cincinnati, which is where we were living after I was fired from my third managing job. And what this was, it was a seminar, sort of a self-help seminar. Whatever issues you want to deal with, that you want to address, you go in there. Well, I really wasn't sure what it was about when I went to this seminar with Allie, and I find after 3 days I'm standing in front of perfect strangers and I'm crying my eyes out, because now I'm sort of tying the emotions I was having as low self-esteem, didn't think a lot of myself, to a lot of stuff in my childhood. Now, I wasn't blaming stuff, because blaming anyone. I was just trying to figure out why I felt this way. And again, I certainly didn't go with this intention, because when your wife is 8 months pregnant and she suggests you go somewhere, you go somewhere. And that was the reason I went there. But I was very affected by this. And as it turned out, I sort of connected the dots, and it was connecting it to the feelings that I had growing up in my house, where my dad abused my mom, never physically abused me, but there was a certain fear and there was a certain tension that was in the house all the time when he was home. And it was just a very insecure feeling for me. I know my mom used to prepare dinner for him. If he didn't like it, he'd throw it against the wall, scream and yell, would wake my mother up in the middle of the night to prepare food for guys he brought home with him. Just a lot of things going on like that. When I was 8 or 9 or 10 years old, my oldest sister was protecting my mom, and she had a knife, and my mom was in the corner of the dining room. My sister had the knife in front of her. I was on this corner. My dad was over there. He was reaching into the drawer where he had his revolver, because he was a policeman, and he was telling my sister to put the knife down, and she wouldn't do it, and I just happened to go over and take it off her and put it down, and my dad pulled his hand out of the drawer and just left the revolver there. So there are a lot of things that I grew up with in my childhood. My mom and dad finally split when I was like 12 years old, and if my mom was still with us today, she certainly would not have been comfortable with our starting our Safe at Home Foundation. But when we were in New York and Allie asked me, what would you, because we've always tried to gear a foundation or a charity in the cities we were working in, geared toward children. And when she asked me, what were you thinking about, and I basically said, let's do something about domestic violence. And it sort of floored her, because coming out of my mouth, she really didn't expect that. But again, it's something I felt free to talk about. I really credit the seminar that we went through, the Life Success, with allowing me to understand it and talk about it. And it was Allie's idea to gear it toward education. So what we do, and what Michael was referring to, we have safe rooms in schools. We have them in the East. We have 11 schools that we're in, middle school, high school. And we're in the Brooklyn and Queens Family Justice Centers. They're safe rooms for school. We named them after my mother. We call them Margaret's Place, where we have a counselor, and we have peer groups. And it's in the school where the kids can go and sit and not necessarily have to talk to anybody. We have literature. We give them coping tools to deal with what's going on in their homes. And it's something that's worked out very well, and we're very proud of it. The response, I know one particular story, this young man was thinking of joining a street gang, and made 2 or 3 trips to Margaret's Place, and all of a sudden he was looking at brochures for college. And I know growing up, I had nobody to share it with. I know there was a lot of whispering going on in my house, because I was like 8.5 years younger than the next youngest in my family, so my older siblings were trying to protect me from what was going on around me, even though I sensed what was going on around me. So there was a lot of whispering, and with the whispering, I felt that I did something wrong, and I felt very much alone. And if I had somebody or a place to go that I felt comfortable talking to about what was going on or what I didn't know what was going on, I think I would have felt a little more secure in who I was and the fact that I didn't cause somebody to be abused. So we started Margaret's Place, and as I say, it's been a huge success for us. And we decided, of course, coming to L.A. was such a different move for us, obviously, coming out this part of the country after being in New York for 12 years. New York, I was born and raised in New York, and our daughter, the only place she's ever known in New York. But I'm happy to say that when she goes to Dodger Stadium, it's much more comfortable for her than when she went to Yankee Stadium. She won't agree with what I'm saying, but I think she came to just about every game this past summer. It was really cool. But we have a program that's successful, and our plan is, as we're kicking off our foundation here, and we're planning, hopefully, to open 2 schools by this fall and put Margaret's Place in the LA area. It's something I'm very proud of. It's something that we have a lot of people, a number of people on our board, a number of people working with us, a number of supporters like Michael, who have been present at our dinners and different fundraisers. And what our plans are right now, we have a golf tournament that's scheduled for July 12th, and that's because that's the All-Star break. The All-Star game is going to be in Anaheim this year. So the trick is when you have golf tournaments, especially when you're playing baseball or working at baseball for a living, it's very difficult to pick a date because, for obvious reasons, you don't know if it's going to work. But the All-Star game being in town, we feel we can get enough celebrities to play with us, and so it's going to be our first endeavor out here. We haven't really decided on the venue yet, but the date is probably going to be July 12th because that's the Monday of the All-Star break. And the one that Michael talked about, the February 27th, I'm excited about because we were out of town when they had the wooden Scully appearance at the Nokia Theater, and I understand it was a wonderful, wonderful time. And T.J. Simers, who, he can be a little cruel at times, but maybe I'm cruel too because I like the guy, and he seems to do good work. They raised a lot of money at that particular function for the Mattel Children's Hospital. And he said, why don't you ask Koufax if he'll do it? I said, I know Sandy. Sandy's a very private person, and I know he's not going to want to do this. I said, but I will call him. And I called Sandy. Sandy says, I don't normally do this stuff. He says, for you, I'll do it. So it really caught me off guard, and it's going to be a fun time because I don't know how many of you have ever been exposed to Sandy Koufax. He's one of the greatest guys I know, and of course his baseball speaks for itself, but he is very private, and I feel very honored that he decided to do this with us. I'd like to just introduce a couple of people if I could. You already met my wife, Allie. Our executive director, who is really based in New York, but I forgot about that because we've been here for a couple of weeks, Judith Lynn back here. Judith, she's our executive director. She's been working out of our office. And our development director, who just came on board a short time ago, Jeff Cleaver. Jeff over here. And the young lady who's going to be manning the phones here in the building, Jocelyn Toner. Jocelyn, over here. And we're really determined to make an impact in this area. I just there are so many people when you think about the cycle of domestic violence that the cycle is repeated because I don't think there's enough education. There's enough help. I mean, there's never enough help, but for an issue that is kept behind closed doors, Awareness is such a great deterrent, and the more we get it out there, I think the more we can make an impact on ending the cycle. And we just felt through education, showing the respect that you need to have for each other, and the fact that it's not the right thing, even though someone in your family may have been that type of person, it's not something that you want to repeat. And that's really our goal, and we just, again, it's a complicated issue, it's not easy. And if you will allow me, before we open this up for questions, actually we have a video first, but before we open this up, my daughter, our daughter, Andrea, 14 years old, and there was a project in school. They wanted the students to write a speech telling why this particular charity was worthy of a $50 donation. And she wrote about our foundation, and other kids wrote about different foundations. And if you will indulge me, I'd like to read this, because it just happened actually the day before yesterday, or yesterday's when she read it, actually, Tuesday. Introduction. When I was growing up, my father was a bully. My mother faced verbal and physical abuse from my father. If he didn't like the food Mom made, he would throw it against the wall. He used to make her get up in the middle of the night to cook for friends he brought home. This is a quote from my dad, Joe Torre, and that is why he started the Joe Torre Safe at Home Foundation. This charity not only provides therapy for children who are affected by domestic violence, but educates them as well. During the course of this speech, I will give you a clear understanding of what domestic violence is, how it makes people feel, what this charity does, and why you should choose this charity over others like it. What is domestic violence? When one adult in the home physically hurts or bullies another person or does things to make the other person feel bad. B, different types of abuse. Physical abuse, when one adult hits, pushes, kicks, or threatens to hurt another person. 2, emotional abuse, when one adult repeatedly puts down another or makes them feel bad or stupid and does not let them see their friends or family, yells at them or keeps them from doing things that they like to do. Verbal abuse, when one adult calls another names, yells, screams, tells another how to act or what to wear, or repeatedly puts down another. And 4th is financial abuse, when one adult controls all the money for the household. How does this abuse make people feel? The people who are abused have feelings such as like it is their fault, nervous or worried, angry, or even like they want to hurt themselves. B, my dad describes his feelings like this. Growing up in a home where there was domestic violence was very difficult and left lasting scars. Although I didn't realize it then, I used to feel like the abuse was my fault. I felt helpless and alone. For many years, I felt ashamed and worthless. So what does this foundation do to help people in this situation? The Joe Torre Safe at Home Foundation's goal is to end the cycle of domestic violence. To do this, they provide a room in schools called Margaret's Place, named after my grandmother. It is a safe room for middle school or high school students to talk to each other and a professional counselor trained in domestic violence intervention and prevention about violence-related issues. Margaret's Place counselors provide group counseling, conduct school-wide anti-violence campaigns, and oversee peer leaders. Peer leaders are students who serve as role models. They educate their peers to recognize the signs of healthy relationships versus unhealthy relationships, domestic violence, and nonviolent conflict resolution. They will work hard to create a better awareness and understanding of the impact of domestic violence. B, continuing my dad's story. In those days, no one in my neighborhood knew what was happening in my home, or if they did, nobody talked about it. I did not talk about it because I was afraid. I didn't know who to turn to for help. If there was a Margaret's Place in my school, at least I had some place to go to realize that ours wasn't the only family that was going through this and that it wasn't my fault. Why should you choose this foundation over others similar to it? And I interviewed my parents, and this was their reply. A, our school-based program is to educate in order to cure the problem of domestic violence instead of just applying a Band-Aid. B, It is a comprehensive program that deals directly with children that are experiencing trauma in their lives. This program is unique in that we provide one-on-one support and group support in addition to educating the entire community with the goal of creating a culture of respect for one another. C, this program was developed not only by professionals, but with the input of people like Joe and his daughter, Christina, my older daughter, who know from experience what it is like growing up in a home where you never feel safe and able to relax. And my daughter, Christina, actually was responsible helping to put this Margaret's Place together when she was working for our foundation. You know, I left home, she was 11, 12 years old, and she has some scars that were left over from that time. They feel in fear not only in their homes, but also in their communities. Our message is to them, our message to them is, you are not alone, it is not your fault, and it is okay to talk about it. Margaret's Place becomes a safe haven for them, a place with support and understanding, a place where they have a voice and someone who will listen with our judgment. Someone, without judgment, I'm sorry. Someone who can give them the coping skills and hope for a peaceful future. In Los Angeles County, 43,458 domestic violence-related calls were received by law enforcement in 2008. 10,722 arrests were made for spousal abuse in 2008. 393 homicides resulted from intimate partner violence from 2000 to 2008. Nationally, nearly 1 in 3 women and 1 in 9 men are victims of domestic violence at some point in their lives. On average, more than 3 women are murdered by their husbands or boyfriends every day. 1 in 5 female high school students reports being physically or sexually abused by a dating partner. Conclusion, I would like to leave you with this quote from my mom. A, the goal of the Safe at Home Foundation is to end the cycle of domestic violence. The cycle continues because it is kept a secret. It is brutality that happens behind closed doors where denial, shame, and embarrassment follow the victim. It is very complicated and that many times a child exposed to this will repeat the behavior when they become involved in a relationship even though they do not want to. They either become a perpetrator or a victim, and their children will suffer as well. That's very proud of my 14-year-old daughter who put that together. And when I went in to her room yesterday and I said, well, how did it go? She says, you got a $50 check for the Safe at Home Foundation. And what she says, she says, I beat out autism and breast cancer. She said, I said, that wasn't the cause. But you know what's interesting in this is the fact that domestic violence is a disease, and it is something that certainly needs to be addressed. And I would like them to start the video so we can give you a video that we showed at our Safe at Home dinner, and then we'll be back for questions. I hope to have the answers.
Childhood should be a time of learning and growing, feeling loved and nurtured. It's a time to dream and succeed, free from danger, pain, and fear. But for many children, studies suggest over 15 million each year, psychological and physical abuse is the shocking, often secret reality of life. The Joe Torre Safe at Home Foundation is dedicated to education and services to protect victims and end this cycle of violence. Founded by legendary baseball manager Joe Torre and his dynamic wife Allie, Safe at Home was inspired by Torre's experiences in his boyhood Brooklyn home, where he was a witness to violence.
I grew up in a home where my dad abused my mom, and it scared me, and I went through pretty much a thumbnail of my feelings as a child. And I looked out in the classroom, and there were 8, 10 youngsters. I'm looking out, and they're going like this. It hit home for me because I said, you know, we've struck a nerve here.
In U.S. families last year, over 15 million children witnessed partner violence at least once. 7 million were subjected to severe partner violence.
So I went to one of the Margaret's places, and there was a young girl, and I will never forget the look on her face when she realized that she was not going to have to be subjected to abuse in her life, that she had another choice.
A dozen anti-violence safe rooms called Margaret's Place are stemming abuse in the New York area. Staffed by trained counselors, these safe havens encourage middle and high school kids to share personal stories without shame or fear of recrimination.
The greatest impact that Margaret's Place has had on the school is raising awareness of issues that aren't normally talked about, like abuse and violence and respect.
I'll bet you there are a lot of people's lives who've been saved just because of taking this issue out of the dark, putting it in the light.
Many times, children that are witnessing domestic violence repeat the cycle. They'll either become an abuser or they'll become a victim.
Violence perpetuates violence. Through education and intervention, Safe at Home inspires children in their formative years to change course, to realize domestic abuse is not their fault, they are not alone, and most important, there is hope for the future.
As my attitude started changing, my mom realized, and she was like, this program is really doing good for you.
It helped me realize what was going on in my house. It could slow it down.
Margaret's Place is where people can come and talk to counselors about what they're feeling.
We have to let it out. We don't have to always keep it in. We gotta find somebody to talk to.
I never used to actually have any goals, but now I'm actually hoping on going to college, becoming an architect.
It helps to know that I have a place to go and I'm not alone.
A person who you can rely on to talk about anything.
It's like your own home.
Helping people is fun and caring about what you do.
Helping other kids really makes me feel good.
I want to be a leader because I could show people how to change the world to make it a better place.
The Safe at Home mission resonates with caring, concerned people everywhere. Light the way to a non-violent future, where children not only survive, but thrive. Be a role model, expose the issue, support the cause.
If you're a principal that's contemplating bringing this to your school building, you would be very, very foolish to turn it away.
Every school should make a little corner, even if it's just a little nook somewhere for Margaret's Place.
We can let these youngsters know that there is a future for them.
There's somebody here for you, and we will give you hope and help you have a better life.
Before we open it up to questions, which will be right now, I just want to introduce one of my former players. In fact, we were exiled from St. Louis at the same time. I was fired and he was traded. Todd Zeal, former Dodger over here. Fire away.
Okay, we have 2 microphones. If you have the microphone, you can ask a question. As always, please one question, no follow-ups.
Don't be shy, because I could really be boring for the rest of this time.
So we'll start wherever anybody. We're going to start the other side of the room, okay? We're in a Dodger shirt.
Dodger shirt can't be bad. I hope it's not.
Dodger shirt.
Uh-oh. I guess all the players were already sold, right?
Players are going to get traded, but we don't have to worry about. Hopefully, you'll stay past your contract.
So.
I was wondering, with the Mark McGwire situation, what do you think baseball needs to do so we can kind of get past the stain of the steroids and the drug abuse and just make it the great game that it once was?
Well, I think one of our big issues in baseball is to gain the trust back of the fans. I know it was very entertaining to watch people hit home runs in 1998, when Sosa and McGwire were going through what they were going through, and the Maris family were watching it from the sidelines. It was a stimulating time for the game because it just seemed like it was so easy to do what they were doing. Then all of a sudden, it came out, and I'm really not sure why it took so long to come out, other than the fact that baseball probably liked what was going on in drawing people because people were hitting home runs. I think, Mark McGwire coming out, although I wish he would have just said, I messed up and I took this and took that, and I apologize, which he did apologize, but just left it at that instead of, you know, insinuating that he could hit home runs even if he didn't take it. I mean, there's certainly, you know, I guess there is some therapeutic value for healing and stuff when, you know, doctors know that better than I do, but I've heard talk along those lines. But, you know, baseball players have been doing this, and not only hitters, but pitchers. And I think the only way we're going to get through this is to basically have to listen to all the apologies and the owning up of all this stuff. And because to me, the most important thing, I mean, our fans are very important. You know, whether they watch us at the ballpark or watch us on television. You know, anytime somebody hits a long home run, you're going to get one of these. You know, I wonder what he's on. And it's just something we're going to have to live with here for a while. But even though maybe Mark's apology wasn't as clean as we'd like it to be, I still think it was a step in sort of turning over the stones, you know, and trying to get this stuff out, because it's just something we're going to have to endure now until, you know, we get the trust back, because I think that's the most important thing in this game. You know, this is one of the few games that we really haven't changed a lot of rules. You know, other sports, because of the size of the players, stuff have had to change rules to protect quarterbacks, to, you know, get players out from under the basket and stuff like that. But I think we're just going to have to endure it. And, you know, we continue to draw fans, thank goodness, and it's been exciting here in L.A. for the last couple of years, and now the expectations are high. Probably the highest compliment I was paid this fall was having people come up to me and say how disappointed they were over what happened last year, which, you know, to me tells me that the expectations are high, and that's great, because that's, you know, we don't want winning to be a surprise here. You know, we certainly want people to expect it, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
I don't know if this is, oh, there we go. Going back to the foundation for a minute, you talk a lot about middle school and high school kids. What recommendations do you have for kids at a younger age who may be experiencing this kind of at the age that you really started experiencing it? Where do they go? What kind of assistance can you recommend there?
Yeah, Al, come on up here, please, sweetie. She did unrehearsed here, my wife, my daughter. She's young enough to be my daughter, but she's really my wife. Allie, come on, darling. It's really finding someone that you can talk with about your issue. I mean, if I felt comfortable going to an uncle or cousin or somebody, that probably would have been something.
You wanted me to come up
but
here
go
and
ahead. But you're so much better at this.
The issue of going and directing these programs to younger kids is you have to have parental approval to present a lot of these programs in the school. So we're limited. We do have two programs in the Justice Centers, one in Brooklyn and one in Queens, and they have very high immigrant populations. And we provide the child care facilities for the families that are going in there to get the services that they need. And we're doing research on the kids that are directly affected with domestic violence. So it's a little complicated. We can't always take them out of those situations, but we work with the parents then. We teach them other just basics of things that we might take for granted, of even just how to sit down and play with the child. They don't have those skills. They've been beaten up, and they need direction. So that's what we do for them.
And we also have now assistance for the teachers, because you know, we've had experience where teachers really don't know what to do when they see a child come in. But now we have some learning tools for them and coping tools for them to know which direction to go and what to be able to do, as opposed to just turning your back on it.
I'd just like to share a story that happened with our daughter. She was in kindergarten, and she came home, and just by talking about the issue and what's going on and what we're doing, she came home one day and she said, you know, Mommy, there's a little girl in my class, and I think she needs your help. And it turned out, to make a long story short, she was in an abusive situation, being abused by her mother. And when I went to the school, they had no idea what to do. So there are a lot of great service providers out there. I directed them to the service providers in their area, and they provide the counseling and the support that they need in those situations.
Allie and Joe, a lot of people in the room here have lived both on the East Coast and the West Coast. Maybe you both can give, now that it's been a couple years, was it in New York versus L.A.?
You're talking baseball-wise?
Professionally and personally.
Well, professionally, it's, as I say, New York was exciting. Yeah, there's no question. I mean, for a guy who had never been to the World Series, and Todd, I mean, he mentioned the story. We had lunch here about 10 days ago. And what'd you say? We only won? Give me the World Series story you gave me.
I just let Joe know that the 4 World Series rings he has on his finger, I'm sort of connected to because he had to beat a team that I was on to get there. And I don't mean just any team, but his 96, he went through Baltimore where I was, and I had the pleasure of playing for a lot of teams. So, and the following 2 years I was with Texas, and he had to go through us to get to the World Series and win those 2 rings. And then finally in 2000 I was with the Mets, and that was a World Series. That was our Subway Series that they prevailed. So I told him if he would notice, he's been to the playoffs and he's even been to the World Series a lot of other times, but he didn't go through me to do it. So he's still only got 4 rings. There you go.
That's why I stopped winning. You know, you did, yeah, it was exciting. I mean, for a guy who had never been to a World Series, other than buying a ticket and watching my brother play in the 50s, to get to the World Series in your hometown, winning as an underdog in '96, it was pretty darn special. It really was. And as I say, sometimes the expectations got so high that I felt it was unfair. Not to me, but you know, the last few years in New York, where because we didn't get to the World Series, that it was deemed a failure, and I had trouble relating that to my players, because my players, a lot of those years, won more games than anybody else in our league, so I just couldn't say that was a failure, and it became very stressful for me, aside from all the people waiting on our lawns, whether to find out if we were staying or going. Coming out here, it's laid back, a lot more laid back than New York, but I just want to make sure you know that it doesn't mean the need to win is any less, because that's the one message that we make sure we get across. But the fans are so appreciative out here. You know, I could see where the weather would make them more appreciative, because it's ideal. But they really enjoy what we do, and I think the players really feed off that. And personally, I want you, because that was your job, to take care of that end of it, right?
Well, I'm very excited to be here. It's been a difficult transition at first, but I'm enjoying it. What's not to enjoy about LA? It's great. It's fun.
What about the media, Joe? Is it any different in New York than L.A.?
Yes, I mean, the media in New York, managers, it's a little different than it was in the old days. The old days, you'd have guys come in one at a time, and you'd sort of repeat yourself and tell all answer all the same questions from different people. That's when there were a lot of newspapers in New York, and they all wanted different, different stories. But then it got to the point where newspapers diminished, and it got to the point where everybody was together, which is easier for the manager because you only have to say it once, but you found out in each paper they all wrote the same story. But it lasted a long time, especially in New York. I mean, we'd have 40, 50 people every night in the dugout surrounding me and just talking about, the game. And if we were playing the Red Sox, it was crazy because every game was like a season. If you did something wrong, it was like, you were supposed to be sent to the penitentiary for it. I mean, it was nice. I say we came here in 2009 and 2008, and we played the Red Sox toward the end of spring training, and one of my pitchers hit Manny Ramirez. I said it was such a relief knowing Manny got hit with a pitch, and it was nobody's fault, because every time something like that happened with a Yankee-Red Sox game, it was criminal. But the media is, they're fewer here. And so far, they've been very kind. And T.J. Simers, too. One day I wasn't in the mood, and he says, "You're cranky today." And I agreed with him and told him where I thought he should go. And he hasn't gone there yet. But I enjoy T.J. because, you know what? He's he's got a job to do, and he's controversial. Excuse me. He writes what he wants to write, but he doesn't need. The one thing I like about TJ, the way he writes, is the fact that he's not looking to scoop somebody about anything. You know, he doesn't need to get to the finish line first because he's writing a column, and it's his perspective on whatever it is he's writing about, who he's writing for. You know, Andrew Jones back in 2008. I said to Andrew, Andrew, just don't do this, because Andrew was trying to pretend that not hitting didn't bother him, and I knew it did, but he let TJ know it was no big deal, and, you know, it was off to the races. They booed him for the rest of the time he was here, and, you know, Andrew was a good guy, should have been in better shape, yes, but if he had started his stay here, it may have worked out a little bit different if he started in a more open manner. But I still think TJ, you know, he tries to entertain, but he stirs up a little controversy. But I said it's all pretty innocent stuff. You know, I mean, he gets on people, but it's nothing really personal except to if you don't get enough sleep like I do every once in a while. No, we got one over here first.
Oh, wow. Thank you. This is an honor, actually. I was at the '96 World Series, and it was a great experience. It seems that domestic violence is also learned in the workplace, that behavior. And how have you tried, because it seems that you have, to create a workplace where people can be driven by their boss but also not be abused?
That's a very good question. And I think as coaches and managers, we sometimes, you know, have to be partially responsible for, like, say, in high school football or whatever it is. You know, we tell these youngsters, go get it, be aggressive, blah, 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 and they go out on a date afterwards, and all of a sudden they continue the aggressiveness, and it's not acceptable. So there are fine lines. But what I try to do in the way I manage is the respect factor. I think I've had a lot of feedback over the years in the fact that when my teams have lost, I talk about the other team succeeding more times than our team failing, and you know, because it's not always going to be ours. I try to teach respect, and I try to, you know, you have to respect. First of all, you have to respect yourself. You respect your teammates, respect the opposition, and know it's a game you have to play, and play it as hard as you can. And as John Wooden, who is a great mentor of mine, used to say, he was a lot prouder of some of the teams that never won than the ones that did win, because how hard they worked at it. So the only thing I ask these players to do is do as well as you can do, work as hard as you can, prepare, as John likes to say, you know, not preparing or whatever it is, you know, preparing to fail, you know, something like that if you don't prepare. And he, you know, it's all about looking yourself in the mirror and saying, this is it. But I don't want to have anybody point fingers and blame anybody. It's so much easier to say I failed or I didn't get this job done. You know, you have two $5 million players, one pitching, one hitting. Somebody has to come out on top here, you know, and it's just something that's the nature of the game. Especially our game, it's loaded with negative statistics. I mean, even the best players fail 7 out of 10 times. So I always try to keep the positive. I always try to have these players understand it's not easy doing what they do. So understand that, don't take it for granted. But that's a great question.
Hi, Mr. Torre. The Safe at Home Foundation seems like a great and honorable program. We all thank you for bringing it to Los Angeles. Wanted to have you speak to the differences and similarities between putting on the Dodgers jersey and the Yankees jersey and feeling the sense of heritage and history behind it.
Well, Yogi Berra told me when I became a member of the Yankees that when you are introduced and go stand at first base in a World Series, you'll never feel anything like it. And he was right. The only thing I tried to concentrate on is not to trip on my way out there. But it was a wonderful feeling. And as I say, I grew up, I was born in 1940, grew up in New York. And you grew up having 3 Major League Baseball teams in your town. I mean, It was unbelievable. You know, there was always a game on television because at that time they never televised home games. There were always road games. So, but there's always somebody on the road that you could watch. So you know, to me, the Dodgers, when you hate a team, you know they're good. You know they're good. And as I say, I hated the Yankees and I hated the Dodgers because they won all the time. Even though the Dodgers never won a World Series before 1955, they were in a lot of those World Series. And they were always known as a ball club that was a very proud organization. I know in Brooklyn they called them the Bums, and then when they came out here in the late 50s, they looked at them a little bit differently. You know, they had this beautiful ballpark, which is still a beautiful ballpark, and you know, they had these pristine white uniforms, and it was great. It was really great. And of course, it didn't hurt to have Koufax and Drysdale and all those guys that can take the bat out of your hand, as they say. But when I left New York after the '07 season, as I said, I was very comfortable with the fact that we were just going to retire. And then the Dodgers showed interest, and that was, yeah. The Dodgers showed interest, and I don't think there have been any other club that I would have said yes to. There are only really a handful of clubs that really get your attention right away in baseball. And, you know, a lot of those clubs had managers. And even the Dodgers at the time, I said, well, they have a manager, you know, and then I was told that, you know, that wasn't going to be the case because, you know, Grady had, you know, that feeling of, you know, not wanting to do this anymore. So once I was convinced of that, I said, let's see if it can be fun again. But the Dodgers, special, as I say. I used to come in, when I come in as a player, you'd always pick up the newspaper, and at that time, pitchers pitched every 4 days instead of every 5 days, and you'd always count on your fingers when you would get into town to see where Koufax and Drysdale were going to pitch, and we never missed them. And that, to me, you know, and if it wasn't those guys, it was Sutton, and it was Hershiser, and, you know, Fernando, and guys like that. So it was always something very special. The Dodgers are a very, very treasured organization, and I feel, hopefully, our goal is to, you know, get this organization back to where it belongs and where it should be, and that's as one of the elite clubs, because, you know, this town deserves that, first off. I mean, this is the second largest market in baseball, and the Los Angeles Dodgers, this has always been a baseball town when I came here and played, when I managed against this team, and that's really something that stimulates me at this point in time. You've got the hammer now. You've got that microphone. Nobody's going to stop you.
I was wondering if you could speak on how professional sports and your role as manager has changed with all the technological advances, whether it's Gilbert Arenas and Twitter, or Matt Kemp and TMZ, or even just regional sports networks like Fox Sports West and Prime Ticket, and how everything's changed through the years with all these new.
Yeah, it's frightening. I mean, we played baseball when I played back in the 60s and 70s. It was a sport. You know, now everybody wants to know your business, and players are under a microscope. They're making a huge amount of money. People feel that we are entitled to know everything about that person. And I know in New York it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. In fact, somebody called me the other day and said, yeah, I see where Derek Jeter's getting married. You know, it was in the New York Post. And it was funny because I text Derek and I said, I know you're going to get married around our dinner date that we're, you know, when you come to our foundation dinner. Just kidding. And he said, well, just like the New York Post, he said, it's my sister's getting married, not me. So, you know, but it is very tough today because you do not have you don't have any private time. You know, in the TMZs where they have the camera in your face all the time, and whatever you say seems to be important. We were coming out of a Broadway show over the Christmas holidays in New York, and you know, somebody they suck me in because I usually just ignore questions because it's usually, hey, you know, how's Alex's behavior or the McCourts getting divorced or whatever it is, and I just ignore it. But this guy sucked me in. He says, how do you like being in New York? I said, it's nice being home, and then started asking me about something I really didn't care about, so I rolled the window up. But they're all over the place. They're really all over the place, especially in this city where you come out from having lunch, and we went and bought a Christmas tree, right? And there they were, you know, out on the street. You know, hi Joe, hi, how are you? I said, Christmas tree. I come to find out that Paris Hilton was in there. It wasn't for me. It was perfect. It was perfect. I was saying, boy, did I arrive here? You know, it's a Christmas tree. But it's much different and much tougher, and it's, you know, the media has a job to do, but this freedom has really brought in a lot of players that make it really tough for these players to ignore, you know, because I say don't read the paper, don't listen to the call-in shows, but there's so many other things out there that you'd have to live in a closet somewhere, you know, to not be aware of what's being said about you and what people are really, a lot of them are told to think about you.
Since Manny's come back, and without, say, the juice, his performance and his ability and the way he looks and getting around certainly is not what it was before he went out. And when you watch him, the pitchers coming inside on him and so on, yet we have to keep him in the middle of the lineup. And so this year, if he performs like he did after he came back, do you have the ability to change him and move him farther down, or is he, because of what he's getting paid, going to have to be in the middle of the lineup?
Yeah, no, I have no requirements because of what somebody gets paid where to hit. I think last year, you know, the one thing about Manny and what he did a couple of years for us, obviously, was terrific. We don't go anywhere without him. He missed 50 games. But the thing that, you know, I try to remind people is the fact when he came back, he had no spring training. And, you know, you're gone for 6 weeks or whatever it is. And sure, you can go to the gym, you can work out and do all the things you do. And yes, you know, what he was doing steroid-wise, you know, that's another issue. But he had lost all his balance. He was very shy of the ball inside. I think he put a lot of pressure on himself because these young players were counting on him, and he wasn't himself. And I talked to him. He was very uncomfortable. And again, we'll have to wait and see. But the one thing I did see is the lack of patience with him and the lack of balance. That's the one thing that Manny, whether he was taking steroids or whatever he was taking, he had the balance and a legitimate hitter. You know, there are certain players when you talk about their ability and then you see how many home runs they hit because, you know, they were on steroids. But then there are players who are good players. And Manny just wasn't himself when he came back. And I'm giving him the fact that he didn't have spring training and he never got comfortable. And then all of a sudden things started rushing in on him, you know, late in the season. And then the postseason came and he was a mess. He really was a mess. Good guy, same with everybody. He tried to, you know, help everybody and talk to everybody. He was never a truant problem. He never showed up late. He always did his work, all that stuff that I keep track of. But I'm going to wait and see this spring before I really decide on where he is and what kind of player we're getting. But I know he wanted to be, but he just was very nervous the second half of the year. So we'll see. But I have no, you know, I took a lot of guff for batting Alex 8th in the World Series or in the playoffs a few years ago. And, you know, you do what you feel is the right thing to do. Todd got mad at me. I hit him 6th one time. And then I made him take 3-0, which really aggravated him. But it's you know, it's what you do. But I've never felt required to bat a guy a certain place because of how much money or even how good a player he was. Because you know, certain times of the year you want to, you know, do other things.
We have time for 2 more questions, Joe.
Hi. First of all, congratulations on all your success, and thanks for your great work with the Safe at Home Foundation.
I had a baseball question. I'm old enough to remember the 4-pitcher rotations and no pitch counts and things like that. And I don't remember anybody's arm falling off.
That's true.
So I was wondering what your thoughts are about, pitching like that versus what they do today. And since those guys didn't seem to be any less healthy than they are today, why, how it's come to this? And
Well, it's a good question, and we go back and forth on that because I had Don Zimmer for 8 years, and he got even something as simple as a stopwatch he wanted no part of. So you can understand the technology of everything else. I think the fact that we've expanded so often in this game, and pitching is something very dear. There's a scarcity of pitching, and I think. And whether it's right or wrong, and I know Nolan Ryan has addressed this since he's taken over as the president of the Texas Rangers, he just feels that they should throw more. I think we limit our pitchers in the minor leagues. So if we bring young pitchers in the minor leagues, and we did it with Kershaw, we just don't want to make, some of these other ball clubs, when you look at the Cubs with Pryor and Woods and the kid Lariano with Minnesota, where they've hurt their arms, and I think it's probably overcautious. Andy Pettit, he came over when he came back from Houston. Again, technology is part of this thing because now they track it and they say between 85 and 90 pitches, it looks like when he loses what he loses. But I think what you take away from the pitcher there is the ability to know how to get people out, and it doesn't matter if you're throwing 88 or 86. If you know how to get people out, that's what is really more important than the ability itself. So, but until we start stretching them out at a minor league level, especially with young pitchers, it's tough to make them go out there and throw 120, 130 pitches like it used to be. I mean, the average game, 9-inning game, a pitcher was allowed to throw 130 pitches. That was average. That was like 13, 14 pitches an inning or something. That was fine. And when I was an announcer for the Angels, that's the way I used to, keep track of things. But I'm not sure it's the right thing, but I think it's more they're erring on the side of caution because of the scarcity of pitching is why they're doing it. Whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing, what's really promoted is the fact that you have a closer, you have a setup man, you have another setup man. So, and then somebody come up with this brilliant thing that a quality start is 6 innings. And there we are. Years ago, closers used to pitch 7, 8, and 9. Then it was 8 and 9. Now it's 9. And, Mariano Rivera's case, when you want to win, you pitch them, 8th and 9th or whatever. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't have an answer other than the reason why clubs are doing what they do.
Joe, we're going to have a last question over here before I do. Just want to remind everybody the book is for sale over here, and right after it, Joe will sign autographs over on this table. Sir.
First, I just want to compliment you guys. I think it's fantastic that you are working together on the foundation. I think it's very inspiring to see you doing that as a couple. How did it all start? Who sat down who at the dinner table and say, honey, I've got this great idea?
Well, here's honey.
Oh, yes, he listens to everything I tell him to do.
She knows she didn't say ask. She said tell.
Cute. So cute. We actually don't work well together. We don't, but we have a great team that supports us with this effort. And there was an organization that wanted to donate a large amount of money for our favorite foundation, our favorite cause, and we decided at that time we really should jump in and take advantage of Joe being a celebrity and being a public person in New York. And we had been very blessed with all the World Series and all the success, so let's do something good with this. And we did sit down at lunch, and I said, you're going to be fundraising, so you're going to have to be very passionate about whatever it is that we choose to do, and your name's going to be on it, so I think it's something that you should decide. And it's true, when he said domestic violence, I had no idea that he had been suffering most of his adult life, that there were a lot of these hidden demons that he was dealing with. So it was very emotional for me just to sit here and see a very successful grown man continue to be so passionate to want to make a difference. And then I thought to myself, wow, not many men speak about this issue. And you could have a tremendous impact throughout the country. But just by raising the awareness that it's not just a women's issue, and it's not just about taking women and children out of their homes and putting them in a shelter where they are taken away from their family, their communities, and they're hidden away from the abuser and the perpetrator. So, you know, let's let people know that there are children that go with these women, and we really need to take responsibility for them. There's no reason why we in this country and children in this country should have to be suffering behind closed doors. This is a crime that's happening behind closed doors. So let's let the secret out. Let people know that they don't have to live like this. So that was it.
And Michael, one more thing. There was a question asked earlier about what do I tell my players, and you know, and then the attention players get. In that book, some of you have, and of course, when this book came out, I had left the Yankees, and everybody thought I wrote this book because I left the Yankees. But this book was going to be written even if I never went anywhere else. I had agreed to do this book long before, about 2 years before I left the Yankees, so I didn't know at the time that I agreed to do this book that was going to be the case, that I was going to go to another team. But I did write, and everybody thought it was this book that I was an expose. I talked about stuff that was in the clubhouse, and with all the attention players get and all the money that players get, there are two guys in that book that I've talked about that are very high-profile players. One was Kevin Brown, who pitched here, made a lot of money, very emotional young man. Another one was Randy Johnson, made a lot of money, pitched in New York, had trouble in New York, only because he was uncomfortable with the scrutiny, okay? And I did talk about them a little more intimately than other players because I felt that we have gotten to the point of judging people on how much money they make and what they should do for it. And I know in Kevin Brown's case, there was a very sad night in Tampa where he had pitched, and he was never satisfied with what he was doing. He pitched, he pitched well. I thought he pitched well enough to help us, and he wasn't sad. He just wanted it to be perfect all the time. I went in the clubhouse. He said that was it, and he was going home. You know, he'd come out of the game, he went, and I couldn't find him. He was sitting in the corner in the clubhouse, on the floor. He was talking to his wife on the phone, and, you know, he was basically going to go home. And I talked him out of it. I said, you know, you can't quit on these guys. But some of these guys get tortured, and you don't know where it came from. You don't know what's happened in their young life. And I felt in writing that, I just wanted to give people a little different perspective on the person that because he made so much money, he was supposed to do so much, that there's a human element to this. So that's the area where I may have gone over the line to some people, but I just felt it was important to humanize some of these players. And Randy Johnson, he struggled in New York. You know, he was he's a Hall of Fame pitcher, good guy, but New York was not a comfortable place for him to pitch. And, you know, I talked about some of that in the book. So just giving you a little insight into the reasons I wrote the book. It was more or less to celebrate the time that I spent in New York and really the era. I mean, that's a generation. 10, 12 years in baseball is a generation. And the changes that took place in baseball during those 12 years that I was in New York is what that book is all about. And I was very proud of Tom Verducci. I mean, my name is above his because it's alphabetical, folks. He wrote the damn thing. But I was very proud of that book because I think it turned out very well. And once people got, you know, the A fraud and all that stuff out of the way and read the book, they really enjoyed it. But I just wanted to give you a little insight on, you know, the reasons I did some of the things and, you know, what I wrote in that book or told Tom to write because, as I say, I don't have that ability. But we enjoyed this tonight, and Michael, I just want to thank you for giving us the platform to really start our Safe at Home Foundation.
You're welcome. I think this is part one. Part two we're going to talk about, it was raised working as a team, creating a team. Obviously, we have a family here, and I think what we all recognize in sports is just how much it's changed from when the shortstop and the second baseman played together for a decade.
Yeah,
and when we remember the Dodgers out here were the same first baseman, second baseman, shortstop, and third baseman were there for a decade, and now you start with the team, and maybe it lasts for a few months, and then you assemble it in August for the playoffs. And maybe next time, Joe, we'll talk a little bit about how you manage a team where the players change every year. But thank you both very much, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.